Oh, that is a lot. So
minimum level and filters. So you can have it like a function that filters and says only show things that say this.
so you can specify what kind of logs you want to see back?
You can actually build a whole if statement that says only show me logs that say a certain thing.
Okay.
So if there's too much logging information coming back, you can do that. But check this out. Remember when we made that app settings.json?
Yes.
Configuration, that configuration object can have a logging section.
Oh,
Yeah, I didn't know about this either.
it's pretty sweet.
Check it out. So if we go into app settings,
We can add it in here.
it's right
Oh, it's right
there. So
there.
they add it by default. And here under log level, these are kind of magic strings. They're documented, but they're magic because they're not obvious. And you can say, well, I want Microsoft.star,
Okay.
right, to just give me the information level. And I want the default to be debug, but I could like raise this up to say, just show me errors or just show me warnings. So I bet that we could change this to like debug and run the app again, and it would probably be full of stuff.
And this is all documentation. So these are just not random words you're pulling up.
This is all documentation, but the idea is basically there's the default, then there's system.star and whatnot, and then Microsoft. So let's change those to debug and see if we get additional information. Look at that. We get way more than before. And you can see the difference. There's the debug ones, right? There's, oops.
I think we only asked for debug, right?
Well, debug and above.
Okay.
So debug would include info and critical, etc. So here's a debug one where it says index was not found. And then it says, oh, I looked up in the cache and I didn't find debug. That's too much, right? Let's go back here and set it to warning.
So are these the same kind of logs I get if I'm installing an npm package and you're beginning to see the things like npm warn?
So this idea of debug, info, warn, error, and critical, the kind of increasing levels of freaking out, is a common thing.
Okay.
So when you're using like npm, which is a node package manager, and you're seeing warnings and stuff like that, it's like, this isn't good, but it's not going to kill you.
Okay.
That's a warning. Though that idea of log levels is a common thing across lots of software, and you'll see it here as well. So I just changed it to warning.
Okay.
And look how quiet my app got suddenly. It still runs, but it's not seeing any warnings.
Because everything is, it's
cool.
cool.
Everything's aces. So information is a good balance. Okay. That logging section got passed into this logger factory. So where did logger factory come from? We'll cover dependency injection a little bit later in the intermediate class, but note here iLogger factory is passed into configure, just like we passed in hosting environment.
And
it's that factory that gives us different kinds of loggers. Okay, so we could probably make another logger if we wanted to, for startup.
Okay.
So we could go and say startup logger equals logger factory create logger, and then we'll pass in our type because we're the startup object. Yeah. So now we have our own logger, because you might want to have different levels for different kinds of things. You might want to tell Entity Framework to have verbose logging and tell ASP.NET to be quiet.
Okay.
Okay. So the startup logger, we'll go and say log critical or log info or log whatever.
So we just want general information, or?
Well, I don't know. Let's just do a bunch of different logs and see what they all look like, because why not? Yeah. So there's log critical, there's log debug, there's log error, log information. Okay, so that's an excessive amount of things that could go potentially wrong, right? It's horrible, horrible stuff. Let's run that. Ah!
Whoa.
That's good. Oh, let me pause it.
And there's some appropriate boos there.
Boo. So it shows you the object that it came from. This is really important. It could have just said critical boo,
Yeah.
but it told us that it came from web application 23.startup, because we might want to start sharing our logging and having our logging throughout our application. And if you just saw, you know, got here, like I need more information than that, that's important. So in here, let's go and take this and we can actually set a log level. So I'm doing all of those, right?
Yeah.
But we will say, I believe it is logger factory. We said add console. I'm going to actually remove this call to the configuration section, okay?
Okay, gonna get rid of that.
Yeah. And instead, when we say for the console, I'm going to pass in my minimum. We'll say log level. We'll say dot, I don't know, warnings. So we're only going to see warnings and above. Anything else we'll ignore. You see, I can bring it out of the configuration, or I can just set it in code right there. See? So now my infos and my debugs are ignored.
They're all good.
They happen, but they're just thrown out.
You don't need to see them.
They're a no-op because I don't need to see them. I think it's kind of cooler to remove that, right? And then do this config section and then have different levels, which I think is cool. Yeah?
Oh, so you'd place that into your config?
So here we've got get section logging where it is that. And then that is the description of the kind of object that the logging subsystem needs. So let's see what that looks like with logging turned on again. Oops, I need to close my deal again. Unfortunately, in Visual Studio, when you do the logging, you don't necessarily get the color. It's not quite as
fun.
Not quite as fun. I don't know, I just like ASCII art. So for some reason, like the difference between critical and fail makes me happy. I'm not sure why. All right. All of that information, though, if we switch that and go over to IS Express and run it this way, still appears, just in a different way. So let's look at our output.
So this is going to appear in Visual Studio instead?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Except the color is not quite as awesome.
As in it's non-existent?
As in it's non-existent.
But there it is.
There it is. And then from there, of course, I could put logs in a text file. I put this in Azure. They could go to Azure Storage. I could then download it and analyze it later. So I think the point is log early, log often.
Okay. And typically when you do a logger, is it something you write on your own?
Well, because logging as a concept is now built into ASP.NET Core, we can go and get the basic loggers like debug logging and console logging by default. But there are also other loggers that we could potentially bring in. So we could try a third-party logger.
Okay.
Try that. So there's a logger. I've actually never used it, so this will be my first time. That is called Serialog.
And you'd add it as a NuGet package.
Mm-hmm. And Serialog is actually a third-party logger. This is not a Microsoft thing.
Oh, so this is the first NuGet package we brought in that isn't Microsoft.
I guess it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the JSON one was JSON.NET, but that was done by another individual. But yeah, this is a totally not Microsoft logger, but it's smart and it knows how to get along. And you'll see here, it is restoring. So we should see that show up in a moment. And all of its dependencies. And it'll look just like any old, there it is, see? And it brings in its things that it needs. Okay, so we've gone and added that. Now, under Configuration Builder, when we made our configuration up here, let's go and say, you know, let's make a log file, a file name. We need to go and figure out where this log is going to go. I don't know yet. path dot combine. I think path is in system.io. And this is going to be that content root path that we keep seeing.
Okay, it returns.
Log file, my log file dot text.
So should it be dot text?
Yes, it should be.
Okay.
Good eye, good eye. Log dot logger equals new logger configuration dot write to file log file create logger. All right. I think that's dot write to
dot file.
I think I need another extension. See this here? It says logger does not contain a definition to file and there's no extension method. Well, file's an extension method, so I think I need to go using serialog dot, is it extensions or is it dot syncs? Oh, I know why. So I brought in serialog, I'm guessing here, but I'm 90% sure. I brought in serialog, but serialog has other features
That are required to go along with it.
because log systems are very modular. And it could go and ask for, do you want to send your logs to the cloud? Do you want to send your logs to anywhere? So they're called syncs. Send it to SQL Server.
Okay.
Or send it to HipChat. You could send your logs to Slack.
Oh.
Why not, right? I mean, send it wherever makes you happy. So there are file loggers, and there's what's called rolling file loggers. So it'd be a file, rather than the file growing and getting bigger and bigger, it rolls over. It never gets so big, all right? So let's try that. We're going to add this one back in there. So that's an additional package that I just added. Okay. And when that has been restored, it's automatic. There you go. See?
Then you have to add it.
Yep, look, and then file just spontaneously. It just spontaneously stopped working. Yeah, look at that.
You didn't even need to bring in the using statement.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So here, when we say add console, I can plug in someone else, right?
So you can add serialog.
I can add serialog as a participant. And I believe it was dot add serialog. So it says, doesn't have that method. So I think the last one was serialog dot extensions dot logging. That may be another package for me to bring in fact. Everyone's packages are different. Some of them are bring in one thing and it just works. Other people are more focused on having things not be too fat, too big.
Okay.
So you don't want to include.
So you just bring in what is needed at the time?
Right.
So is it similar to what we saw with ASP.NET Core -MVC.core?
Exactly. So I lazily kind of like it when it's like, bring in logging. And then it's all, right? But the serialog people here are smartly breaking their application up into tiny little things. So you only get what you need, right? You want extensions for .NET Core, you want serialog core, then you want just the file bit or just the HipChat bit. They give you no more and no less. It may feel like you're bringing in a lot, but if you look at these packages, they're tiny. They're tiny, tiny packages. Okay, so let's run this. Now, where is our log? So let's go and look.
There it is.
My log file. So let's look at the size. We'll go back here and do some stuff. Movies.
And as you begin to do things, the size should increase.
I would think so. Check it out. Yep.
Oh, so this is my entire, so it's just basically taking everything and
the
dumped
whole
it.
experience.
Yeah.
So that's where you then need to bring in, context. Sometimes people will go and make a unique number to represent a particular request. It's not an identifiable thing, but like, I'd be request number 4 and you'd be request number 5. We could see just the things that apply to one or the other.
So when you get a log file, if something's crashed, it's this.
It's going to be in here, and you're going to have, if you like, the code. Like, look at this. You've actually got the SQL queries directly from Entity Framework. If you had a global error handler, you would go and grab the exception and dump it into here. But logging is more than just text, right? Remember when we went back over here and we said manage NuGet packages? We went looking for Serialog syncs, or things that are going to attach to Serialog. Send it over to the HTTPS somewhere. Send it to prefix.io, which is a logging system. You might want to send it to SQL Server or Splunk or Glimpse. There's all these different places that you could potentially want to send this to. Raygun.io. These are third-party services that can capture your logs and give you an analysis on it.
Oh, it can give you an analysis.
Oh, yeah. So it'll go and say, like, for example, at Raygun, which is I really like these folks, you will get an error and it'll say, we've seen this error 6 times in the last 5 minutes.
So it potentially even give you graphs?
It'll give you charts and graphs. It'll tell you that this error began at this time, it happened a lot, and then it's starting to back off. It'll identify different things. So it's pretty cool stuff.
Okay, so it sounds like you can add a whole bunch of smart stuff into logs. I can probably throw some machine learning onto that and predict. Oh, okay.
Once you go and you have logs of that size and complexity, you can do a lot with them. And that really kind of gets to the point and the conclusion of how big a community that we've got here.
It's a huge community. So there are a couple of places that people can go. One of them is one we've been exploring throughout the day, .net.
Right.
And this is a great place to just learn, read the documentation, download. And this can actually, the experience starts in the browser, which is a really cool thing.
It really is. The online tutorial here is going to continue to get expanded. You can learn C# without having to download anything.
Without having to learn. And it's going to grow more and more and more. And we actually have people working on it right now. And people within the community, and some of them as young as college kids.
It's true. We do have a lot of college kids. And then we've got docs at docs.asp.net, specific to ASP.NET. But you can get to all of this from, if you go to .NET and click documentation.
So this is the landing page for all.
For everything.
So what if I wanted a little bit of a more in-person feeling, like live.asp.net is a great way?
That's a great example. So live.asp.net is the ASP.NET community stand-up. And people will come on every Tuesday, and we will talk about cool blogs that have happened in the community, talk about fun things that are happening, conferences. We also talk to the team, so it's a stand-up like a scrum.
Oh, so it's a scrum, but the entire community gets to participate.
Absolutely.
So if they wanted to submit questions to this...
They can do it on Twitter. They can do it on Gitter, gitter.im.
The Slack for...
It's like Slack for Git, right? So like you came on and talked about code schools, and Steve Sanderson came on and talked about Angular and JavaScript. So we do have people coming on talking about all sorts of things every Tuesday, and you can go and add it to your calendar and see whether you want to participate or not.
Okay.
Cool.
Cool.
So this has been an introduction, a 100-level introduction to ASP.NET Core. We want to make sure that you check out the other Microsoft Virtual Academies. We've got Intermediate, and we've also got cross-platform.
Yeah, and we'll be looking at ASP.NET Core running in different environments.
And soon we're hoping to do MVAs to include more advanced techniques on containers and deeper dives as much as you like it. So if you appreciated this, please let us know. Follow us on Twitter.
Yeah.
And because we've been talking to ourselves this entire day, feel free to tweet applause to either myself or Maria, and just let us know that you're out there and that you watched the show and that you appreciated it.